Hey guys, welcome back to my video series where I want to take a look at different technical implementations that I did for the game Footgun Underground. Today I want to show you a little technique that I used on quite some different occasions in the game, and this is using a mixture of 3D spatialized sounds and 2D static stereo sounds in one single event. The first example of this is the wall crash sound of one of the first bosses in the game. Let me show you a little gameplay clip first. Okay, so this sound is quite simple. It is consisting of two multi-instruments. The first is the initial impact and the second is the crumbling and the ambient sound of the impact resonating in the room. And I decided to spatialize the initial impact. So I put the spatializer plugin on the track itself and not on the master. And this sounds so loud like this. So you can hear that the impact itself is actually panned with the spatializer. And now the 2D part. So I actually decided to use a little automation on the panner, which is actually being automated by the direction that the sound is coming from, so that the 2D part is being panned a little bit depending on if the impact is happening on the left or the right of the player. And if I play this all together, I used this technique on this event because I wanted the initial impact to be most precisely spatialized, so that the impact, the visual impact of the enemy on the wall and the sound is coming from the exact same direction, so that the player, without seeing the scene, knows where the enemy is currently impacting with the wall. But I felt like there was a kind of ambient layer missing, so I put this layer in and initially spatialized it together with the impact, but it didn't sound quite right because it was just so pinpoint and not very filling the room much. So I tried to find a solution, and the solution was to just spatialize the impact and let the room filling ambient sandy stone crumble sound for the impact on the room itself being semi-static stereo. Another example for this would be the beam attack of the slime spewer enemy. So this is basically exactly the same setup with the 3D track with the spatializer on it and the 2D track with no spatializer on it, the panning automation for the direction and an accent. So if you just listen to the 3D sound alone. And on the 2D sound. And combined. Another event that I used this on was the player kicking the ball sound. So this actually is a little bit more complicated, but it follows the same principle as before. We have a 3D spatialized layer and a 2D, in this case, exactly static stereo sound, but those were layered with many different sound layers, so I decided to use nested events instead of using the layers directly in the parent event. So let's have a look at the 3D event at first. So this sound is modulated depending on how much the kick is charged up before the kick is happening itself. So we've got quite a few layers here for the ball kick, some punch being added to it, some transients for the normal kick or the very heavy charged kick, a little bit of a sci-fi layer, and so on and so forth. So let me just play this for you. So you can hear that the intensity of the shot sound is increased the more the shot is charged before. So you really get a kind of sci-fi boom sound when the shot is pretty much charged to maximum. And I wanted to emphasize this fully charged state of the shot with some room filling 2D sounds as well. So I added the 2D layer, which is in fact a thunderclap and some long tail. And blending these together, results in this. In the final release of the game, the splitting up of the 3D and 2D layer of the player kicking the ball sound isn't that dramatic, because in earlier iterations, the listener for the sound, so the FMOD listener wasn't actually following the player, it was static with the camera. So you heard the player movements move around the camera and the listener itself. So the effect of this was more noticeable, but I decided to keep it in because the 3D and 2D layers are still a little bit different, because the 2D layer is completely stereo and room filling, and the 3D layer, being spatialized a little bit in front of the camera, is still more narrow. So there is still a difference if you were just using it all 3D or all 2D. I've been using this technique on quite some other sounds as well, mostly on boss enemy sounds, because I felt like the added 2D room filling, like ambience layer, was adding to the, so to say, hugeness of the enemy, and it makes it bigger and more impactful, and having some sounds sounding like they have an impact on the whole environment, and it is not just coming from a single source in space. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little trick that I used and hopefully learned something new. Maybe you could tell me in the comments if you already used this type of technique in one of your games as well, and what you've been using it for, or if not, what you would imagine to use it for. Have a good day and see you on the next one. Cheers.